Tens of thousands of football fans came to Havertz.
Electrifying.
Yes, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cannon Podcast. I am here with my Wohan, my favorite person to nerd out with, and we are here to discuss a quite interesting player that I think divides opinion. And I'm going to start off right away. We are, of course, talking about Kai Havertz. We just did about 50 minutes on the Patreon side looking at clips and individual clips that I really would encourage people to watch because this is somebody that I think we have missed quite a bit. Also, that divides opinion. And of course, we'll create a really fun battle in the comments below as we talk about, of course, our preferences for strikers and whatnot. But very first, I'm going to ask you a question. Has Kai Havertz justified the money that we spent on him, which is, to remind everybody, £65 million, and depending on what you read, at the very least 250 to 275k a week. Is he a top three earner at Arsenal for you? And has he paid back his transfer fee?
I think we can look at it in two different ways, right? I mean, I'm a massive Kai Havertz fan. I mean, politician G-Van. I think in terms of the transfer fee, when I'm looking at some of the fees that have been paid to players, not just in the Premier League, but in Europe as well, I think Kai Havertz has. I really do. Like, I think when I look at his performances, we look at the 2024 post-January period in which Arsenal operated at 100-point pace, had to get that in. Kai Havertz was a massive part to that. You know, I'm looking at performances against Brighton, Sheffield United, Liverpool, Wolves, a lot of really good games, Bournemouth, Everton on the final day. These are really top performances, and Kai was a massive part of the team in that. And even in, last season, I felt Kai Havertz started the campaign really strongly, but then he did tail off. He did have his poor period, and I think it's very important to make a note of. Kai Havertz has had poor periods at Arsenal. I'd say when he first came to the club, I thought there was a lot of things that he needed to improve on. I think we spoke about it a lot in depth in the Patreon about Kai Havertz in that initial period before the big goal against Brentford. Not talking about Bournemouth, but the Brentford goal when he came on and scored the winner. The positives with Kai were more out of possession and off the ball, the defensive side of the game that we were looking a lot more at as opposed to the on the ball stuff. That came post-January onwards. And I thought he had good periods last season, but I felt the biggest issue with Kai last season was the fact that we rinsed him like a bar of soap. His tactical flexibility went against him. I felt the minutes that he was enduring, that inevitably led to him suffering that injury, and he's not been able to develop consistency in terms of games since then. But overall, I think the transfer fee, he's certainly warranted. The wages, I think that's a different question. I think the wages, I've always felt like, being a big Kai Havertz advocate, I didn't see the reason behind putting him on that wage because, there's a lot to talk there. But that's where it's not.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. And I mean, I definitely want to really just highlight quickly his skills that we did highlight in the Scouted just a little bit. I think one thing with Kai is people are going to talk about inconsistency of action, whether that's in a shot, whether that's in his link-up play. Inconsistency has plagued Kai, but I think it's in preparation for action. So what we highlighted on the YouTube, and again, I'd pop off to really look at that specifically in the Patreon, is this idea that I talk about leaning into the duel, preparing yourself to be on your toes, controlling your space, whether that's through kind of your own body, your arms, however you want to do it. Kai Havertz, when he controls his space, he controls the ball, and he does really well in his link up. He does really well in preparing for a shot when he controls his space. We see some interesting reverse shots, and he's really clean with, striking the ball through his laces as well, but only when he does those things. Now, when that starts to fade, we start to see really inconsistent link up. We see frustrating link up where he does a brilliant first touch and then perhaps loses the second or third touch and is quite weak to contact when he doesn't prepare for the duel. So I would say one of the things is it's a strength in the sense that he can do it, but it's a weakness in that he's not consistent in applying those things. So it leads to inconsistency of final action. And of course, I think with his accelerations, he's got running power, but I think his aggression off the ball, especially in those blindside runs, can be improved. He's really somebody that likes to come to feet, but he's not aggressive in the spin behind run. And it's not because he can't do it athletically. He can, but I just think he's not aggressive enough in the way that Gyökeres can. But I don't want to, take away all the meat from this bone. How about for you? Like, what do you make of the pros and cons of Kai in general? Just as a quick reminder, because we haven't seen him for so long.
Absolutely. I mean, with Kai, the inconsistent is the perfect word for him in pretty much every single aspect, right? Because he can do. You look at the clips, and you'll be able to remember vividly some of the goals, some of the key passes, some of the crosses he's delivered, and he's put it on a plate for players. He's got the capacity to do all these things. The biggest frustration that people have is the inconsistency. It is sometimes he's in complete control of the situation, but then he'll play a lazy pass. He will not generate enough power on his shot. And we mentioned it on the Patreon where Kai Havertz is like when he's in front of goal, when he's got a lot of time to think, that's when he starts to mess it up. Whereas when he's playing with intuition, he's a lot better. And the point that you made about in terms of, he can do the drop and spin in behind, these are things that we want to see more of Kai. It just naturally comes more to his game to counter feet and to facilitate and link. Yeah. But the reason why I want to stress the fact that he can do it more is the fact that before he came to Arsenal, outside of Erling Haaland, Kai Havertz made the most runs out of any player in the Premier League for Chelsea in terms of runs on the shoulder and in behind. That's a perfect example to show that Kai, we associate with him as being a facilitator in terms of dropping and linking, then attacking space. You look at that really important game against Liverpool, the 3-1. There was a really good passage in the build-up to the Bukayo Saka goal, in which Kai is dropping, he's linking, and then he's spinning in behind to then get through on goal for Alisson. Those are some of the things that Kai can do really well, but it is the inconsistency. And I find it interesting. My final point is like, Kai Havertz has a tendency to drift towards the right-hand side. He has a bias there. Gabriel Jesus, a tendency to drift towards the left. Gyökeres more left-hand side, but more on the last line, looking to challenge the back line with runs. You got 3 different players there, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's ultimately a good thing. And, the frustrating thing with all this is there's so many times that I said, if we can combine what Gyökeres gives with Kai Havertz, we've got a player in terms of some of the strengths of both, because, they really are very much different players and different tools. For example, in the shooting, Gyökeres, I think, struggles in terms of taking too many touches to create separation for a shot, which Kai doesn't do. He's brilliant at that. However, he's really poor at the shot, the backlift, the power, which Gyökeres is phenomenal at. And, when you look at how we can use these players, not only can they be used together really, brilliantly, I think, because you've got a Kai Havertz who likes to come to, but then ghost and has a little bit more of a presence in the box, whereas Gyökeres is that Vardy-esque channel runner in that sense. He's very aggressive in his running of space, and it's a mentality thing. And it's something that Madueke has brought. It's something that Eze has brought. It has been something that the team has brought, their mentality to transitions, the aggressiveness in attacking space that we've talked about in other pods. I want to wrap up in terms of your use now, because this is pretty significant in terms of, I think, title challenging capacities. Having somebody like Kai Havertz in your squad, along with Gyökeres, and people will want to do a player war. I teased you in the Patreon that I would make you decide. I'm not going to do that. I think that people need to recognize that they offer very different things. The one thing I did want to ask you, though, is how he can be used, because I don't think it's Gyökeres versus Kai Havertz. It's together, and it's the opportunity to play them together and play each of them in different game states even. I think we can become a lot more purposeful with our opposition in terms of when both are played. Like if you have a mid-block, a physical mid-block that needs stretching, Gyökeres is brilliant about pushing the line back. Yeah. But once the line is sufficiently pushed back, you want more of a Kai, a Marino type of presence in the box to be a reference. How do you see these players being used? Not just together, but in terms of some of the games that, are Kai Havertz games, are Gyökeres games. When we make that, there are certain games for types of players. What do you mean by those comments?
I think you've hit the nail on the head, really. I mean, when I'm looking at like some of Kai Havertz's, best moments in terms of in the box, it is that, attacking the back post or getting in front of his man in whatever way to meet the cross after our winger cuts inside into the half space and hits it into that area, which is, for me, one of our trademark moves. Whereas I don't think Gyökeres necessarily has that consistently to his game as of this moment of time. People will point to the preseason game against Bilbao, but we need to see a bigger sample size. Whereas with Kai, we've seen it quite a few times. Seen it against Wolves, seen it against PSG, seen it against Zagreb. There's more games there as well.
City, Liverpool.
Loads of moments which Kai has done that. But I think, like you alluded to, not only just games in which we need to stretch and force teams back, but also I think Gyökeres in specific games, when we're not playing at our best and we've got a lead, but we're struggling to hold on, and we need someone who can stretch and release pressure. I think Gyökeres would be fantastic in that regard as well. So, ultimately, I think it's two players who give different qualities, and that, for me, adds to the flexibility that Arsenal have. I think Arsenal have always been a team that has a lot of layers to their game model. We can attack teams in different ways, but now we've got the players to do it, and that's the key point.
Yeah, I would just like us to be more intentional with our use at this point, and we've got to stop this comparison battle because at the end of the day, it's about Arsenal winning, and I actually don't care if one of them plays more and we end up winning more games, but I do want us to become more intentional, like I said. So when we want to push the line back, which isn't just physical mid-blocks, it could be a case of maybe we're under pressure, like a City is penning us in and it's 1-1 or it's 1-0 and we're trying to protect a lead. Getting somebody to stretch is going to be incredibly important. So getting a Gyökeres like that you just lump to run channels will push the line back. It's not just a physical mid-block, but that's an example for if you want to stretch a line, it's not always just mid-block, low-block, whatnot. It could be more intentional than that. And I hope we become that. And ultimately, I think they share minutes. They both benefit. Gyökeres isn't constantly playing to get tired and we don't get kind of West Ham performances. And vice versa with Kai, we don't get Everton of December 2024 where we ran him to the ground. It's ultimately a need for both of these to share the minutes to gain the most application. But guys, thank you so much for sticking with us. We hope you enjoyed that shorter summary of Kai Havertz on a Scouted. Again, a reminder, if you are a Patreon member, you can vote and have exclusive voting rights for the Scouteds that we do during the year. And we've got a ton of different stuff. Wohan, what can they get if they're debating to become a member? It's ridiculous if you are, but you get a lot of perks and not just the word of the day.
The word of the day is fantastic, if I do say so myself. You get ad-free main podcasts, you get Scouted like the one we've had here, you got rewatches with James B, me and James B, data pods potentially soon coming back, not potentially, definitely will come back, youth pods, Discord server. If you want to become a director, you got George's Tactics Corner as well, loads of different things. So yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. And you can now blink after we've released you, the prisoner, Wohan, from those things. He's been indoctrinated quite well. But guys, thank you so much. And make sure that you guys are going to check out TCP Live that I have made Wohan late for, which is another initiative that we always do. But thank you guys so much. I appreciate all of your support as always. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, leave wonderful comments for Wohan and Wohan alone in the comments below. But thank you so much. We love you. And thanks for keeping it Arsenal.
Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. This was one kind of queue the ladies thoroughly enjoyed.
Electrifying. Electrifying. Inspiration.